Let's talk to someone who absolutely does understand about the life of a farmer. Let's talk to James Wright. He's on the line, joining us now from the protest in Westminster. He's a farmer, an agri-tech entrepreneur. Good afternoon to you, James.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I know you've, for people watching, it looks like there's not so much of a big protest. You've kind of slipped away so we can get a signal and actually hear you, and very much appreciate that. Now, an awful lot, thousands of farmers have descended on Westminster today to make that protest. Just explain to us, for a lot of people, and I keep asking my guests this because I think it's important to come from your own words, why you think that the government imposing for the first time a 20% inheritance tax on family farms worth more than £1 million, because there'll still be a lot of people, and I see this all the time online, people and politicians saying, £1 million, you own a £1 million farm, you're rich, it's only a 20% tax, it's going to affect very, very few farmers. Why are you so, and your colleagues, so unhappy about it?
Well, look, I'm a tenant, so I rent my farm. I also own part of it. It's above the threshold, so we will have to pay the tax. And in my lifetime, we won't generate enough income to pay it. So although farmers, you know, we don't want to be treated differently, the simple matter of the fact is that farming is not profitable enough to be able to pay it. That Labour have got their sums wrong.
There's a wonderful bit of timing from that that truck bell there, horn there. And this is the thing, a lot of people were looking at sort of, you know, gentlemen farmers, these aristocrats, their big houses, and people looking at the land and saying, well, there you are then, you've got all this land. But as you say, tenants, they may, obviously, farmers may have land, but actually they'd have to sell it in order to pay that inheritance tax if they wanted to hand it down to their family. Have you been in farming for generations? Because many of the farmers we're talking about, people who've got, you know, 300 years on the same piece of farmland.
So I'm a first-generation farmer. Yeah. I bought 2 pigs for my student loan 10 years ago. We bought our first bit of farmland in April, having rented it for the last sort of 10 years. And you would think someone like me would be all for breaking up sort of the people who've owned land for generations. But no, it's bad for the countryside. It's devastating for rural communities. My children go to a very small rural school. All of the children in the school are either farmers or work for farmers, the sons and daughters of. The moment you start losing that critical mass in the rural community, you don't just lose the farms, you also lose the schools, the post offices and the pubs. And this is devastating. It cannot be understated.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, actually, how many of our callers who live in rural areas have said that they're in haulage or the local shops, and how much life is integrated. Do you think a lot of this is a sort of a town v country kind of argument where, as Sam Armstrong was just saying, you know, you've got a lot of people in government and the civil service and the Treasury and MPs, they just have no understanding, as frankly people like me don't, no understanding of how the countryside works, how food actually gets onto our shelves. Hence that, I mean, brilliant, you know, slogan, you know, farmers, no food. It doesn't just appear in the cellophane out of nowhere. Someone actually had to produce it and till the land and tend the animals and produce it and take it to market. It's a really long, very, very hard process to us just picking something off the supermarket shelves. Do you think there's just a complete lack of understanding in our modern world from millions of us about how our food gets to us?
Yeah, I mean, I don't pretend to know how things work in London. I wouldn't tell somebody how to sort of improve the tubes. And simple fact of the matter is, London-based politicians like Steve Reed shouldn't be coming to the countryside and telling us how to live our lives. They don't understand the complexities involved in farming. They don't understand the amount of capital that's tied up. They'd be far better off letting the current system lie. And it only generates £520 million a year, 0.04% of government funding. They'd be much better off looking at raising money elsewhere or cutting spending. And what they will do is devastate rural communities that Labour simply just do not understand. Although
a lot of Labour MPs will want them to understand it, because we understand some 100 Labour MPs now, the newly elected bunch from July, actually have large, you know, rural constituencies. These were always traditionally the Tory shires, sometimes Liberal Democrat, but now Labour seizing a lot of those with a split vote. They're going to perhaps be having to pay lots of attention, and an awful lot of the protesters today are actually meeting with those MPs, trying to explain what the issue is. Do you get any sense at all that the MPs, that the ministers, that the Chancellor or the Prime Minister are listening?
Well, I mean, clearly not, because we've been very clear over the last couple of weeks that the damage this is going to do not only to family farms but also the nation's food security. I think if you're a newly elected Labour MP, you were elected under a false promise. Keir Starmer promised last year not to repeal agricultural property relief, and he's done exactly that. Yeah. So, yeah, I think you would be feeling pretty sheepish if you're a Labour MP meeting literally a few hundred metres away from where we are right now.
I mean, if the government says that we need to raise taxes, people with the broadest shoulders, there are ways of doing that which wouldn't necessarily affect as many farmers. I mean, you know, for instance, you know, not raising the amount that a farm would have to be worth, you know, by a considerable amount, so it didn't hit most farmers. Perhaps tackling, and this would be unfair for you, I realise, but farmers who are new to the job, who are not, you know, not farmers who've handed it down through generations. We know some of the rather rich folk who've decided to buy up farming land as a bit of a hobby or as a way of avoiding inheritance tax. They could easily have put in loopholes and things to tackle those people without impacting the vast majority of people who actually produce the food that we eat, couldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There are ways. I mean, look, the clear message today is U-turn on the tax. Take it away. We don't need it. It's bad for the nation's food security. But if they are going to keep it, they can change it. They could treat it like a rollover relief. So if you passed your farm between generations, but you never sold it, you'd never actually pay the tax. If Labour wanted to do this and protect family farms, they could. But it's not about raising money. This is about a war on the countryside and them taking control, taking back that land that's been farmed by farmers up and down the country for generations. They simply aren't listening.
Do you think there's any chance they're going to change their minds?
Well, I think today's the day to do it. You know, there are thousands of farmers standing around me now. You know, if they're going to make the change, they need to soon, because this won't be the end of it. This is the peaceful day where we're all coming to share our views. But farmers will not be cowed by a Labour government that's based in London.
Well, we shall wait and see. I know you've got an awful lot of backing from our audience and certainly from people like me as well. James Wright, farmer, agri-tech entrepreneur, thank you for talking to us.